Good evening and welcome to tonight's regional news. We start with a story in Barbados. Almost 2,000 people, mostly dressed in white, took to the streets of Bridgetown Sunday morning to show their disapproval of mandatory and coerced vaccination in Barbados. The walk started at 9 a.m. and along the journey, some people carried placards while others shouted, I quote, "We have rights. We ain't taken the vaccine," end of quote, and quoted lyrics from Bob Marley's "Stand Up for Your Rights." Motorists honked their horns in support of the activity as the walkers passed through the streets. A swarm of police officers arrived at the scene, including members of the task force. They walked from Pelican Village to Independence Square in about 40 minutes. The walkers continued but eventually dispersed. And now for a rather tragic story from Jamaica. An early morning football game ended in tragedy in Howell's Content near Yorktown, Clarendon on Sunday when gunmen opened fire on a group of youngsters, killing an 8-year-old boy. Alleged eyewitnesses say 3 men alighted from a Toyota motor car and began firing into the crowd. Little Javere Bojo Phillips, who was in the area to visit his mother, often waited for the end of the football game to ride his bicycle on the field. The child was shot and killed as he sat on a grave watching the game of football. The incident occurred around 7:40 a.m. The police were summoned, and on their arrival, Javere and 2 men were seen with multiple gunshot wounds. They were taken to the hospital, where Javere was pronounced dead. One has since been released and the other admitted in serious condition. Ear-piercing screams of grief and agony filled the air in the community on Sunday as residents watched the scene of crime personnel retrieve Javere's blood-soaked body from the gravesite near the family's home. The family shared that Javere was an intelligent child with an inquisitive mind who had a knack for learning. And now we tell you that former Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Sir Lester Bird, died at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, August 9, 2021. Sir Lester Bryant Bird was the second Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, who served from 1994 to 2004, and he was also a well-recognized athlete. In 2014, he was made a Knight of the Order of the National Hero, KNH, by Antigua and Barbuda. Prime Minister Gaston Browne on Monday described the 83-year-old as a great son of the soil, as he led the country in mourning the death of the island's second Prime Minister. A statement from the Office of the Prime Minister said that all flags must be flown at half-mast beginning immediately, and that planning commenced for a state funeral at an agreed-upon date. And now we tell you that Brazil's far-right president Jair Bolsonaro ignored calls to drop his feud with the Supreme Court on Sunday and called one of its justices a, I quote, "son of a whore," end of quote, amid rising tensions over his unfounded claims that the nation's voting system is vulnerable to fraud. Speaking to supporters in southern Brazil, he insulted Luiz Roberto Barroso, the top court justice, who also heads the Supreme Electoral Court. The insult was uttered during a live broadcast shared on Bolsonaro's Facebook account, but later deleted. Copies continued to be shared on social media. Justice Barroso, speaking at a forum on electoral systems after the comments, said that if his actions were causing such a nuisance, it was a sign he was doing his job properly. Bolsonaro has railed for weeks against the electoral urns used in Brazil and pushed for the adoption of printed receipts that can be counted if any election result is disputed. He has threatened not to accept the result if the system is not changed. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court approved an investigation into the president's unfounded accusations about voter fraud. That was all for tonight's regional news. Thank you for joining.